What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily videos Monday through Friday covering all the major sports, whether it be NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL, news, highlights, games, tier lists, all that fun stuff. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the AFC North. Obviously yesterday, if you haven't already, make sure to check out our segment on the Buffalo Bills. Offense, how they'll kind of look without Stephon Diggs, better or worse, this upcoming year. But the AFC North is one of the most compelling divisions, and we'll pull up the four teams right there. Want to give a quick preview, Nick, a question of what kind of teams in this division can we trust? And, per se, which team has the best shot, because right now, even in the NFC, everyone's target is the Kansas City Chiefs. What teams have the best shot to take down a Patrick Mahomes-led team if they were to meet up in the playoffs? And where do you think each AFC North team lies heading into the season?
When you talk about trust, it's kind of tough because a big part of that is injuries, and I want to say the Bengals. If these four teams are healthy, I'm picking the Bengals. I trust them the most, but they're a team that you got to worry about with injuries. But I don't know if I trust the Ravens even healthy. Just last year we saw it when they met up. They had home field advantage and just couldn't win the game.
Their defense clamped Patrick Mahomes. It was just their
offense. Their defense has been good, but because the Chiefs have a good defense too. Everybody talks about, Mahomes, Travis Kelce, but the Chiefs have a very good defense too. So when thinking about how a team can get past the Chiefs, you got to think can they game plan against Mahomes, but also can they, if it comes down to it, can they score on the Chiefs? Because that's a big part of it. And a weird part of me wants to say other than the Bengals, the Steelers, just because they always have a good defense, but I don't know if they can score the points. If it ended up turning into a shootout, there's no way the Steelers are beating the Chiefs that way. They just don't have the firepower to do it. So I want to say the Bengals is probably my pick and most people's pick, just because Burrow's done it a few times.
Yeah, no, obviously the Bengals have done it. They've always been in scrappy games. And, I do want to also pick the Bengals. But, like you said, a big part of it's health. Joe Burrow, I'm starting to get slightly concerned with these health injuries because first year torn ACL, and then it's been the start of every season he's dealt with something. It was the hamstring last year in training camp. The year before that, he had his appendix removed or something and looked really bad the first month or so. And then obviously last year, middle of the season, gets a wrist injury. So for me, Joe Burrow is becoming a question mark because everyone, rightfully so, he's proven he can be a franchise quarterback, but he needs to stay on the field. And we'll have to see about them. For me, this was kind of a tough question of who I trust. I think I have a different answer for who I trust the most versus who I think could actually do it. Because I really do like the Ravens, but I don't know, just something about me is telling them we saw last year,
exactly.
They couldn't get the job done at home. Everything was in their, favor. And
last year, I feel that was the Ravens' year. All year, they were just dominating teams, blowing teams out. Defense was playing unreal, and the Chiefs still got better. So, it's hard to say any team in the AFC is going to be able to beat the Chiefs. The only pick I would make if they were playing the highest % chance to beat them, I would say is a healthy Bengals team, just because they've done it before. Not because they match up way better against the Chiefs or anything. It's just Joe Burrow can win you a big game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And my trust is probably in the Bengals, just because Joe Burrow's done it. You still got Jamar Chase, but I'm curious with the T. Higgins thing because that contract situation is still looking very weird. Is there, a trade, or is he just playing? I think he's playing it out now.
Yeah. They said they still want to work on something, but I'm pretty sure he's going to show up to
Yeah, which is um, but yeah, no, I liked how you gave out the Steelers because obviously when we did our defensive tier list, we had them S tier just because TJ Watt, arguably the best defensive player on the planet. Um, Joey Porter Jr. really
Mhm.
saw last year. Stuff. And just Mike Tomlin has
Yeah.
never had a team, with a losing record, and that says something when he's been in the league for 20 years. And he's had some questionable rosters. Mason Rudolph has been leading some of these teams. I'm just really curious how their new QB situation works out because I think Russell Wilson, obviously in my fantasy sleepers, I had George Pickens. I think you had him in your fantasy, like maybe bust. But George Pickens, regardless, I think will be a great option for Russell Wilson in that running back room. Najee Harris, I think, improved. Finally, had his best year last year, especially, and maybe it was because they were splitting up the carries. Because what was the other guy's name? Jalen Warren.
Yeah.
Was looking like a dog for them. And then if someone else in that receiver room can step up, and then the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields thing, will play itself out. But the Steelers, I think, similarly to like a Cleveland, I think the Steelers and Browns are both built the same. Couple running backs. Obviously, the Browns have Nick Chubb and fully healthy. He's a dog. But two really great defenses, really good running games that can build off of that. And I think both of those teams and great coaches, because Kevin Stefanski got an extension. I think he's like a top 5 head coach in this league. He's won Coach of the Year 2 times now. And that's saying something in Cleveland that he's lasted as long as he did. And it's only been like 5 years. But I want to give credit to those two teams. So I feel like the Steelers and Browns, both have like the recipe where you need to punch them in the mouth with the running game and then play great defense. And we've shown Cleveland's numbers at home are great. On the road, it kind of slips up. Can they kind of, find somewhere in the middle? Maybe they can just get better on the road and not, because in that wild card game, their defense looked awful. And regular season wise, their defense was not great not great on the road. But the big question mark for Cleveland's Deshaun Watson. I'm curious kind of, how do you think he'll perform this year if he's fully healthy?
I see him being like fully healthy. I mean, we saw what he did in Houston when even on those bad teams, he was like in MVP talks because of how good he was playing. But I just think those days are past, and with all the injuries that's piled up, like his shoulder, it's kind of like what we saw with Cam Newton. Like he suffered that shoulder injury and just hasn't been the same. I think his ceiling is like if he plays a full year. I think it looks a lot like Russell Wilson's year last year with the Broncos, where like it wasn't as bad as people thought, but it was nothing like insane. It was just, Russ had, I don't even know if he had 4,000 yards, but he had like 20.
He did, but it was like, I think at least, especially at the beginning half, it was like, a lot of effectiveness, like quick, passing. But
And I think that's what the Browns. I think that's what the Browns need out of him if Nick Chubb is healthy. Is they just need a guy who's not gonna, go 3 and out, turn the ball over, make stupid decisions, like put them in bad spots. Just be efficient. Make the big throw when you need to, but don't make the big throw every single time like you were in Houston because you don't have. I know you have Amari Cooper, but I feel like DeAndre Hopkins is definitely better than Amari Cooper. But and I know Russell, didn't he have like 25 touchdowns last year? I know he kind of was up there in touchdowns, at least, compared to the year before. But
he did.
I think that's like his ceiling, I would say, this year is what Russ did last year.
And when you said that, like, I do agree, that's probably what's going to be, and kind of what it was when he was healthy. They were kind of just winning games off their defense and just running the ball well and making the quick, easy reads. But it's also saying something when you paid him that contract you did, that's what it's come down to now, to basically just be a game manager. And that's why the Broncos got so frustrated with Russell Wilson, because they're paying him to be a game manager, and Sean Payton was losing his mind. And, that they also didn't approach that right, the Broncos. And, I mean, Sean Payton sucks with that, like middle of the season was like after like a win, like you got to take a pay cut now. It's like, can't wait until the off season. Like we're in the middle of the ground to be talking about this. And it's like, I think that goes to show how much confidence Sean Payne really had in Russell Wilson, which also
Yeah.
kind of ruined the chemistry. So yeah, that obviously not smart. But yeah, no, the Deshaun Watson contract, it sucks, but can you make it work? Could he stay healthy? That's just a couple things. But I mean, Cleveland's roster alone, when you have Nick Chubb back there, I believe it's also Jerome Ford now is their RB2.
Jemai. Sorry, I'm actually forget. He was
Yeah.
one of my fantasy clutch.
Yeah.
Like I picked him up in fantasy.
And maybe it's not even Cleveland's running back, or well, it's obviously they're a talent, but it's also Cleveland's offensive line always being really good in run blocking, and just being one of the best O lines in football the last couple seasons. So Cleveland has the recipe to muck it up in a game where it wouldn't surprise me if they could upset the Chiefs, just because you've got to have a team that can run the ball and control clock, and that's why the Ravens should have really won that championship game. But what they did do was they got away from their run game early on in that game, which was so surprising because they've been one of the most best run teams in the league. You have the best rushing quarterback, and that's why I still want to put the Ravens up there, because they still have the ability to run the game. But I don't know, for whatever reason, one of the worst play calling games I've ever seen when you're the number one rushing offense, over the last handful of seasons, and they got away from the run early on in the second half or quarter. It was way too early to abandon it, and it was a one score game throughout, so that was kind of a shame. But I think all four of these teams, it wouldn't surprise me. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say what the Chiefs do, because you just brought that up, how they went away from what they do, and that reminds me so much of when I watch the Patriots, play all these big playoff games, and now it's the Chiefs. They make teams go away from what they do best, because those teams are so overthinking it. We need to change something up to be able to beat these guys, because what we do isn't going to be good enough. And it costs so many teams games, because like you just said, the Ravens were so good at running the ball all year. They've been so good for God knows how many years, pretty much since Harbaugh's been there. And since they've gotten Lamar, they've been the number one. Have they not been the number one rushing team in the league every year with Lamar? They go
they've been top
200 yards per game, and just every time they go away from it because they're just trying to find a new way to beat the Chiefs. And it's just dude, stick to what stick to your guts, because you're right, they're not gonna be a team that's gonna throw the ball all over the place. And as much as people love Lamar, and I'm a fan of Lamar, I like watching him play, but he's not a guy who's gonna be able to win you a game going 30 for 45. That's just not.
Which is fair. That's not his game. He's not built for that. But
the team isn't built for it either. They have Mark Andrews, and last year he was kind of playing, on one leg.
Yeah,
and then they have Zay Flowers.
And it was also that mental mistake. I just remember you could argue Baltimore played well because if Zay Flowers didn't fumble at the goal line on that touchback, where maybe at a tie game that goes to OT and who knows what happens. So overall, just, it was a crazy game. But Baltimore, I still think you can't rule them out, obviously. But we both kind of agreed, Bengals are probably our number one trust team, and we're both really high on them going into the year, assuming health. But I would say if Joe Burrow gets another injury this year, I don't want to say I'm done, but I'm not picking the Bengals to be a threat, because I just can't trust. Eventually, health has to play in. In the NBA, Zion Williamson is that number one guy where it's when he's on the field, he's great, or on the court, he's great, but he's not on the court enough. So or on the field. So yeah, but overall, my final question, to wrap up this AFC North segment is maybe a percentage, or just what do you think the chances are we get? I don't know if it'd be the first time ever, but 4 teams in the. I think it would be, because we just moved to the 7-team playoff bracket a couple of years ago. That all 4 of these teams go to the playoffs.
I think it's a higher. This division is definitely the highest percent chance that happens, but I mean it's still super unlikely, because we're just talking about right now, barring an injury, Say the
I
Steelers.
know it takes one
Say
injury
TJ Watt
though.
goes down. Say TJ Watt goes down. I don't think they make the playoffs. If Deshaun plays like garbage, I don't think they make the playoffs. But I do think it's a real possibility because, the teams in the AFC West, the Chiefs are going to be – they could be the only team coming out of that division. The AFC East is probably only the Bills. The
Yeah,
South
the Jets are a question mark. Dolphins may. We've talked about them kind of be getting figured out late in the year. And
the
then
South
AFC
could
South
only
is a
be the
question
Texans.
mark. Yeah. For
So
me, it's the Jags. I like the Jags, but I also have the Texans in mind. But yeah, no, it could only be one of the Texans. Yeah, so it's kind of
yeah, it could be the division winner of this, and then the next three teams are wild card teams. So it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, I also do agree. I think this division, has the best chance, especially in the AFC, obviously. But I'd probably go, even if I had to put like a 0 to 100 scale, I'd go like 25% just because, like you said, all it takes is one injury. We've seen TJ Watt get banged up. But even then, the Steelers always find a winning record. But yeah, the Browns are always kind of off and on. They're like either the 11-10 win team they are, or like they end up with 6 wins. But obviously, we know we expect we expect the Ravens and Bengals to be there if they're healthy. Just the amount of talent on that team, especially at the quarterback position. Yeah. But regardless, every team's goal here is to take down those Chiefs. And I think each team has like a unique perspective on how to do that. If I had to do an official ranking, I'd probably still go like Bengals 1, probably Ravens 2. I'd probably go Cleveland. I'd probably have Cleveland and the Steelers tied because I do really think they're like a copy and paste teams of each other just with questionable quarterback play. But if Deshaun Watson is good, then they might move up to 2. And same with the Steelers. If Russell Wilson pans out to be, those 2 years in Broncos were a disaster. Obviously, he's not Seattle, Russell Wilson, or Justin Fields takes, a huge leap at a different, good system and good coaching with Mike Tomlin. And we'll see, though. Steelers, Browns, they're kind of in the same tier for me, like a team that could put up a really good fight. Just do they have the firepower on offense, and especially from the quarterback position to, beat a team like a Patrick Mahomes-led team.
Okay. You asked me percentage-wise what the odds. I would say 30%.
Yeah, so around the same
Give it
ballpark.
30%. And then if I was to do my ranking, I would put Bengals 1 also. And call me crazy, but I'd probably put Steelers at 2. I think their defense is the defense that could beat Mahomes, but I just don't trust Lamar against Mahomes for some reason.
They just were so close last year, and it's
exactly and just it's mentally exhausting. And we talked about it before, the year after Lamar wins MVP, he could have a fall off. And then the Browns, I don't trust the Browns in a big game. They lost in the wild card to the Texans, and I get it was an away game with a Joe Flacco, but they didn't look good.
It was disappointing. A lot of people were hyping up the Browns, if they'll go in, beat the unexperienced Houston team.
Exactly.
And then who was the 1 seed Ravens? And then everyone was anticipating a Browns Ravens matchup where it's divisional, and then people were thinking Browns could just win that because it's a divisional game. They match up well. And then they're on the championship game. They ride that magical high, and Joe Flacco wins the Super Bowl. So it was, that was the timeline, remember? And I believe I picked the Browns to win that game, but it was,
I think a lot of people did. A lot of people did, despite it being an away game, just because they were playing good football up to the time, but their defense just didn't look good. CJ Stroud just was throwing the ball all over the place. So if he's doing that, then I can only imagine what Mahomes would do. I feel like they would scheme up something to just shut down Myles Garrett, and then Mahomes would dice up the DBs. But I feel like the Steelers could game plan pretty well against. Do the Steelers play Kansas City this year? Let me check real quick.
I'll have to look. We're gonna be, talking about every game, so it'll be good if it does happen.
They do. Week 16.
All right, so keep an eye out. Late in the year too, so that's when it gets to the run game more. That might be. I think it's good for the
Mm-hmm.
Steelers. That's later in the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let us know in the comments, everyone, what you guys think. Kind of what's your AFC North trust tree? And, who do you think matches up best? To defeat the Kansas City Chiefs, because ultimately they've won 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. They're the team to beat right now. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback on earth. They've won 2 in a row. How do you beat them? And what's your trust tree for each team heading into this next season? It's going to be it's obviously arguably the best division in football. It's going to be exciting to see what happens. And, like you said, next Steelers Chiefs later on this year, we'll see how right you were on that. Overall, though, going to be a great division, always scrappy. No team is going to go 6-0 in this division because it's just too good of a division. But it will be exciting nonetheless. Reckless speculation during this offseason. But make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.